Have you ever felt like you were standing in a moment that seemed ordinary to everyone else, but deep inside, something whispered, "This is not ordinary for you"? Imagine hearing a message from heaven that has never been spoken before in the same way, and realizing it was meant specifically for you, not for the crowd, not for the world, for you. Today we are stepping into a truth that shakes the soul and awakens destiny. Sometimes God speaks a word so personal, so precise, so powerful that it changes the direction of a life forever. The Bible is filled with moments when God called someone out of the crowd and said something he had never said to anyone else in quite the same way. And if you're listening right now, there is a reason. Because there are seasons when heaven looks at one person and declares, "You are chosen for something bigger than what you see." Maybe you've been confused. Maybe you've been overlooked. Maybe people doubted you. But what if the silence of your past was only preparation for a word God is about to speak over your life? A word that breaks limitations. A word that awakens purpose. A word that reveals you were never random, you were chosen. The three keynotes of this message are: when God calls the one no one expected, the personal word that changes destiny, walking in the weight of being chosen. When God calls the one no one expected, there is something remarkable about the way God chooses people. Human beings look for qualifications, status, influence, and reputation. But God looks for something entirely different. Over and over again throughout history, heaven has demonstrated a pattern that confuses the world. God calls the person nobody expected, the one overlooked, the one underestimated, the one who seemed too ordinary to carry an extraordinary assignment. Think about what that means for your life, because many people disqualify themselves before God ever does. They say, "I'm not talented enough. I'm not educated enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not spiritual enough." And while those thoughts echo in the human mind, heaven is often preparing a completely different story. There are moments when God steps into a life and speaks a word that sounds impossible. It is the kind of word that makes you look behind your shoulder and wonder if he meant someone else, because it feels too big, too significant, too holy to belong to someone like you. But that is exactly how God works. When God calls someone, he does not simply see who they are today. He sees who they are becoming tomorrow. He sees the courage that hasn't awakened yet. He sees the faith that hasn't been tested yet. He sees the strength that hasn't been needed yet. And sometimes the very reason people overlooked you is the reason God chose you. Because if the world had recognized your potential immediately, you might have trusted applause more than obedience. If success had come too early, you might have relied on your own power instead of God's power. But in the quiet seasons, when you felt unseen, when you felt forgotten, when you wondered if your life mattered, God was shaping something deeper inside you. There is a sacred preparation that happens in hidden places. In those seasons, God teaches patience. He teaches humility. He teaches dependence. And while the world calls it delay, heaven calls it development. The chosen ones often walk through chapters that feel confusing. Doors close that should have opened. Opportunities disappear. People misunderstand them. They feel like they are standing on the outside looking in while everyone else moves forward. But what they don't realize in that moment is that God sometimes separates before he elevates. Because certain assignments require a heart that has been tested in loneliness. Certain callings require a spirit that has learned to trust God when nothing else makes sense. And that is why the chosen path rarely looks like the popular path. When God prepares someone for something unique, he often leads them through experiences that shape their character more than their comfort. And when the moment finally arrives, When God speaks that defining word, it lands on a heart that has been refined through quiet battles nobody else saw. You might be in that season right now. Maybe people around you seem to be advancing faster. Maybe you feel like your life has been paused while everyone else is moving forward. Maybe you have prayed prayers that seem unanswered. But what if your story is not behind schedule? What if heaven has simply been preparing you for a word that carries more weight than anything you have heard before? Because when God speaks a personal word over someone's life, it is never random. It comes at the precise moment when their spirit is ready to carry it. Imagine the moment when a person realizes that God is not speaking to the crowd. He is speaking to them. It is overwhelming. It is humbling. It is life-altering. Because suddenly, life is no longer just about surviving the next day. It becomes about fulfilling a purpose written long before you were born. And here is the mystery that many people miss. Being chosen does not mean life becomes easier. Often it becomes more intense. When God calls someone for something significant, the pressure can increase, the challenges can multiply, doubts can appear louder than before. But the reason is simple. Purpose attracts resistance. The moment heaven marks a life for something meaningful, opposition often tries to convince that person they are unworthy, incapable, or alone. But the truth is this: the same God who calls also equips. If He places a calling on your life, He also places strength within your spirit to carry it. If He gives you an assignment, He also provides the wisdom to walk through it. And if He speaks a word over you, He will sustain you until that word becomes reality. That is the beauty of divine calling. It is not based on your past mistakes. It is not limited by your current weaknesses. It is anchored in God's purpose. And when God decides to say something to you that He has never said in the same way before, it is not because you earned it through perfection. It is because He chose you through grace. There will be moments when you question it, moments when you feel too small for the calling placed on your life, moments when you wonder if you misunderstood the voice of God. But remember this: the same God who saw you in your hidden season sees you now. He knows every doubt, every fear, every prayer whispered in the quiet hours of the night, and still He calls. Because the chosen path was never about having a flawless past. It was always about having a surrendered heart. And sometimes the most powerful words heaven ever speaks are not shouted to crowds. They are whispered to one soul at the exact moment that soul is ready to hear them. There are moments in life when a single word changes everything. Not a long conversation, not a complicated explanation, just one word spoken at the right time by the right voice. And when that voice is God, that word carries the power to redirect an entire destiny. Because when heaven speaks personally to someone, it does not merely inform them, it transforms them. Many people spend their lives searching for signs, asking God for direction, wondering what their purpose is supposed to be. They listen to sermons, they read scriptures, they watch others walk in their calling, and deep inside there is a quiet question that refuses to disappear. God, what about me? Do you have something to say to me? And the remarkable truth is that throughout history, God has answered that question in ways that stunned the people who heard Him. There are moments when heaven becomes intensely personal, not general, not distant. Personal. A moment when God speaks something into a life that has never been spoken in exactly that way before. Those moments do not always come with thunder or lightning. Often they arrive quietly, in a prayer, in a scripture that suddenly feels alive, in a conviction that rises so strongly inside your heart that you know it did not originate from your own thoughts. It is as if heaven leans close and says something meant only for you. And when that happens, something inside a person awakens. Before that moment, life may have felt ordinary, routine, predictable. But once God speaks a personal word into a life, everything begins to look different. The same road feels different. The same challenges carry new meaning. The same struggles no longer feel pointless. Because now there is purpose attached to the journey. One of the most powerful realities about God's personal word is that it often arrives when a person least expects it. People think they need to reach a certain level of perfection before God will speak something significant over them. They imagine that divine calling is reserved for those who have already proven themselves worthy. But the pattern of heaven tells a different story. God speaks to people while they are still unsure of themselves. He calls people who are still learning. He places purpose in the hearts of individuals who feel unprepared for what lies ahead. And when that word arrives, it can feel overwhelming. Imagine hearing God declare something about your life that is far greater than the life you have known. Imagine sensing that heaven sees potential in you that you cannot yet see in yourself. That kind of moment forces a decision, because once God speaks a personal word, a person can never go back to living as if they were ordinary. They must either step toward the calling or spend their lives running from it. And that tension is real. The chosen ones often wrestle with it. They feel the weight of what God has spoken, and they wonder if they truly have what it takes. But here is the profound truth about God's word. When He speaks destiny into someone's life, He is not describing who they are today. He is revealing who they are becoming. The word precedes the transformation. The calling comes before the strength. The assignment arrives before the full understanding. That is why faith becomes essential. Because when God speaks, the future He describes often looks impossible through human eyes. It stretches beyond comfort zones. It demands courage that has not yet been developed. But heaven never speaks empty promises. Every word God releases carries the authority of His power behind it. That means if He declares something about your life, the resources of heaven begin moving in ways you cannot always see. Opportunities appear at unexpected times. People enter your life at the right moment. Lessons shape your character in ways that prepare you for what lies ahead. And slowly, step by step, the word begins to take form. Yet there is something else about God's personal word that many people overlook. It does not only change what you do, it changes who you are. When you truly believe that God has spoken something unique over your life, it reshapes your identity. You stop measuring yourself by the opinions of others. You stop allowing past failures to define your future, because the voice that matters most has already spoken. And when that realization settles into a person's spirit, it brings a kind of strength that cannot be shaken easily. The world may doubt you. People may misunderstand you. Some may even criticize the direction your life takes. But the chosen ones carry something deeper than public approval. They carry the memory of a moment when heaven spoke directly to them. That memory becomes an anchor. In seasons of uncertainty, they return to it. In moments of fear, they remember it. When obstacles appear, they remind themselves that the journey did not begin with their own ambition. It began with God's voice. And that changes everything. Because if the calling originated with God, then the outcome is not dependent on human strength alone. The path may be difficult. There may be seasons when progress seems slow. There may even be moments when the vision feels distant. But the word remains. God does not forget what He has spoken. The promises of heaven do not expire because of temporary struggles. The purpose placed inside a chosen life does not disappear because of a difficult chapter. Instead, Those chapters often become part of the preparation. Think about it this way: the greater the assignment, the deeper the preparation required. A life that carries a powerful calling often experiences intense shaping, not to break the person, but to strengthen them. Every challenge builds endurance. Every setback builds wisdom. Every moment of waiting builds faith. And eventually there comes a moment when the person who once doubted themselves begins to recognize the quiet transformation that has taken place inside them. They are not the same person who first heard the word. They have grown. They have learned. They have developed the resilience needed to carry the calling placed upon their life. And when they look back, they realize something remarkable. The word God spoke was never just about the destination. It was about the journey of becoming. Because the chosen ones are not only called to accomplish something, they are called to become someone. Someone whose faith has been tested. Someone whose character has been refined. Someone whose life becomes a living testimony that when God speaks, no obstacle on earth can ultimately silence that word. And that is the extraordinary power of a personal word from heaven. It reaches into an ordinary life and awakens extraordinary purpose. There is a moment that comes after the calling, after the word has been spoken, after the realization settles into the heart that God has marked your life for something different. It is the moment when a person must begin walking in the weight of being chosen. Because hearing a word from God is powerful, but carrying that word through the seasons of life is where true transformation happens. Being chosen is not merely an honor, it is a responsibility. It means that your life begins to move according to a purpose that is larger than your comfort. The chosen ones often discover that their journey is unlike the paths of those around them. While others may live according to what is easy or popular, the chosen ones feel an inner pull towards something deeper. That pull is the calling of God working within them. And sometimes that calling leads them into places that feel uncertain, not because God has abandoned them, but because purpose often requires courage. When heaven marks a life, that life begins to carry a spiritual weight that changes how decisions are made, how challenges are faced, and how time itself is valued. Many people desire to be chosen until they realize what being chosen truly means. It means you cannot live carelessly with the gifts God has placed inside you. It means you begin to recognize that your actions influence more than just your own life. There are people you may never meet whose lives will be touched by the obedience you choose today. The chosen path is rarely casual. It calls for commitment. It calls for faith in moments when the outcome is not yet visible. It calls for perseverance when the road becomes difficult and the voice of doubt begins to whisper. Because the truth is that the weight of being chosen can feel heavy at times. There will be seasons when you question whether you are strong enough to carry what God has placed on your life. There will be moments when the responsibility feels overwhelming, when the calling seems bigger than your current strength. But those moments reveal something important. God never intended for the chosen ones to rely on their own strength. The weight of the calling is meant to drive them closer to Him. Every challenge becomes an invitation to seek His guidance. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity to witness His power working through weakness. And that is where something beautiful begins to happen. The person who once felt unqualified begins to grow into the calling that once seemed impossible. Step by step, faith develops. Courage grows. Wisdom increases. What once felt intimidating begins to feel natural because the Spirit has been shaped through obedience. Walking in the weight of being chosen also means learning to endure misunderstanding. Not everyone will understand the path you are walking. Some people will question it. Others may criticize it. There will even be moments when those closest to you struggle to see what God is doing in your life. But the chosen ones cannot allow the opinions of others to silence the voice of God. Because when heaven speaks something into your life, it creates a responsibility that goes beyond human approval. The mission becomes greater than the desire to be accepted by everyone. And that is one of the most defining moments in the journey of the chosen. The moment when they decide that obedience matters more than applause. That decision requires strength, but it also brings freedom. Because once a person commits to following God's word, regardless of public opinion, they begin to live with a confidence that cannot easily be shaken. They understand that their life is part of a story written by God Himself. And when someone truly grasps that reality, fear begins to lose its power. Fear of failure becomes smaller because they realize that God is guiding their steps. Fear of rejection becomes weaker because they know that divine approval matters more than human recognition. And slowly, the chosen life begins to shine in ways that others notice. Not because the person is seeking attention, but because purpose naturally produces impact. When someone walks faithfully in the calling God has given them, their life begins to influence the world around them. People see their resilience during difficult seasons. They notice their faith when circumstances seem uncertain. They observe a strength that cannot be explained by human logic, and often those observations lead others to ask a simple question: what is different about you? The answer is not always spoken loudly, but it is clear within the heart of the chosen one. The difference is that God has spoken. At some point in their life, heaven said something to them that changed everything. A word that awakened purpose, a calling that redirected their path, a moment that transformed an ordinary life into a vessel for something greater. And that word continues to guide them even when the road becomes challenging. Because the chosen ones understand something that many people overlook. God's calling is not a temporary emotion. It is a lifelong assignment. The word He speaks continues to echo through every season of life. In moments of success, it reminds them to remain humble. In moments of struggle, it reminds them to remain faithful. It becomes a compass that keeps their life moving in the direction of purpose. And eventually, the weight that once felt heavy begins to feel like strength. What once felt overwhelming becomes the very thing that gives their life meaning. The responsibility that once caused fear becomes the reason they wake up each day with determination. They are no longer running from the calling. They are walking in it. And when someone reaches that point, their life becomes a testimony of what happens when a person says yes to the word God has spoken over them, a testimony that echoes far beyond their own lifetime. Because the influence of a chosen life does not end with one generation. The courage to obey God today can inspire faith in countless lives tomorrow. The decision to carry the calling faithfully can create ripples of impact that continue long after the journey itself is complete. And that is the true meaning of walking in the weight of being chosen. It is not about personal glory. It is about fulfilling the purpose heaven placed inside your life from the very beginning. It is about trusting that when God speaks something unique over you, He intends to use your obedience to accomplish something that reaches far beyond what you can currently see. It is about recognizing that your life was never random. You were called, you were prepared, you were chosen. And the same voice that spoke the calling into existence will remain with you every step of the way. The journey may stretch your faith. It may test your courage. It may lead you into places you never expected. But if God has spoken, then your story is still unfolding, and the greatest chapters may still be ahead. Now listen carefully to this final truth. God does not speak extraordinary words over ordinary lives without purpose. If heaven has placed something unique inside your heart, if there is a calling that refuses to leave you alone, if there is a sense that your life is meant for something greater, then it may be because God has already whispered something over your destiny. The question is not whether the calling exists. The question is whether you will walk in it. Because somewhere between the quiet moments of prayer and the unexpected turns of life, God still speaks to people today. He still calls individuals out of the crowd. He still places purpose inside hearts that once felt unnoticed. And when He does, everything changes. So if you have ever wondered whether your life carries meaning beyond what you see today, remember this. The God who created the universe is still writing stories of purpose through ordinary people. And sometimes the most powerful words heaven ever speaks are the ones meant for just one person. Maybe that person is you.